Welcome to the Explainer. Today, we're going to crack open the family recipe book that literally makes you, well, you. We're talking about Hereditary. You can think of it as this amazing biological instruction manual passed down through generations that holds the secret code to who you are. So let's just dive right in with a question I think we've all asked ourselves, probably while looking in the mirror, right? How come I have my mom's eyes but my dad's hair? It seems kind of random, but it's not. There's actually this incredible, beautifully organized system at play. And that answer? Well, it's all about something called heredity. The absolute best way to wrap your head around it is to picture it like a special family recipe book, one that's been passed down for generations. Okay, so what is heredity, really? At its core, it's just the process of passing traits from parents to their kids. And yeah, we're talking about the obvious stuff, like your height or your smile. But it goes deeper. It can also include things you can't see, like a tendency towards certain health issues. And this quote right here just nails it. This idea of heredity being a recipe for you, it's just the perfect way to think about it. I mean, think about a cake recipe, right? It has super detailed instructions for every ingredient, every step. Your genetic recipe is exactly like that, but for building and running your entire body. Okay, so if we're running with this idea of a giant recipe book, it kind of begs the question, right? What are the individual recipes inside, and what are they even written on? Let's break that down. All right, so those individual recipes, they have a name. They're called genes. Genes are the specific step-by-step instructions inside that big book. They might be tiny, but man, are they powerful. They're literally the directions for building every single part of you. And this is such a great way to picture it. You literally have a gene, a recipe, that decides your eye color. You've got another one for your hair texture, another one for how tall you'll be, and there are tens of thousands of them, each with its own super specific job to do. Okay, but these recipes aren't just, floating around loose inside your cells. No way. They're all neatly organized and bundled up on these things called chromosomes. So let's stick with the analogy. If the genes are the recipes, then the chromosomes are the pages of the book they're all written on. And this is the really cool part. This is how your unique book gets made. You get half the pages, so half your chromosomes from your mom, and the other half from your dad. These two half books come together to make one complete, totally unique recipe book, and it's all yours. Okay, so what happens when your parents' recipe books don't quite match up? You know when they have slightly different instructions for the same thing? Like, what if your mom's recipe says, make blue eyes, but your dad says, make brown eyes? Well, this is where it gets really, really interesting. This is where we talk about something called alleles. Alleles are just the different versions of the same gene. So for the eye color gene, you've got alleles for brown, blue, green, you name it. They're just variations on the same recipe. Now, this is super important. For every single gene, you get two versions, two alleles, one from each parent. So going back to our example, you might get that brown eye allele from your dad and the blue eye allele from your mom. So, which one wins? How does your body decide? Well, it all comes down to whether an allele is dominant or recessive. Think of a dominant allele as the stronger recipe. Its trait is going to show up even if you only have one copy. But a recessive allele, that's the weaker one. It'll only show up if you get two copies, one from each parent. And that's exactly why you can carry the genetic recipe for something without it ever actually appearing. Of course, scientists have a couple of handy words for this. If you get two identical recipes, let's say you get the blue eyes recipe from both of your parents, you're what they call homozygous for that trait. And if you get two different ones, like one for blue eyes and one for brown eyes, then you're heterozygous. And this brings us to another really important distinction. Your genotype. That's your specific genetic code. It's the actual combination of alleles that you're carrying around. But your phenotype, that's the physical thing you can actually see. So to bring it all back, the genotype is the recipe written in the book, and the phenotype is the cake that actually comes out of the oven. Okay, so how on earth did we figure all this out? I mean, this stuff wasn't always common knowledge. For this discovery, we actually have to go back in time and thank a humble monk and his fascinating observations in a quiet monastery garden. This guy right here is Gregor Mendel. And get this, with zero fancy lab equipment, he painstakingly cross-pollinated thousands of pea plants. And he carefully watched and recorded how traits like flower color and plant height were passed on. He was really the first master chef to sit down and actually read the recipe book.
So, Mendel's first huge breakthrough was something called the law of segregation. He figured out that even though you have two alleles for every trait, they actually separate from each other when reproductive cells are made. What does that mean? It means each parent only passes on one of their two copies, and that's what guarantees every child gets a brand new, unique combination.
But he wasn't done. He found something else that was totally remarkable: the law of independent assortment. Basically, this means that inheriting the recipe for one thing, say flower color, has absolutely zero effect on inheriting the recipe for something else, like the color of the peas. It brings us right back to our analogy. The recipe for the frosting doesn't change the recipe for the cake itself.
Okay, so that was a bit of a whirlwind tour of the science, I know. But why does any of this matter? Why is understanding your own personal recipe book actually important in the real world?
Well, Mendel's discoveries are basically the foundation of all modern genetics, and their impact it's just huge. It helps us understand our own family health risks. In medicine, it's the basis for things like genetic counseling, which helps people understand the chances of passing on certain conditions. And even in farming, these exact same rules are used to breed better crops and healthier animals. It's everywhere. And that brings us to what might be the most important takeaway of all. Your genetic recipe, your genotype, it gives you the blueprint, for sure, but it is not your destiny. Your environment, your lifestyle, the choices you make every day, those are the other crucial ingredients. The recipe might be written down, but in the end, you are the chef who decides what masterpiece you're going to create with it.